He brought her to our house for Thanksgiving. She was kind and beautiful, like an angel. It doesn't happen like that, I thought. Something was wrong with her. How could a girl with such appearance and career look at someone like Jeremy? He lived on his parents' account until he was 30 and was in no hurry to look for a job or build a career. She was definitely only interested in our family money. And I was right. That evening, our family heirloom disappeared from my bedroom, my great-grandmother's ring and my husband's collector's watch, which were worth several $100,000. Jeremy didn't want to listen to me. Mom, she spent the whole evening with us, he said, but I remember clearly that she went to the bathroom twice and searched our house. I didn't know that this woman would take everything from me, my family, my home. Everyone I loved and cared for many years would believe her. Even my husband, who refuses to see that she is a fraud with a talent as an actress. My name is Lorraine, by the way. Brunette, 63 years old, born in Ohio, raised on common sense and casseroles. I've lived long enough to know that when something looks too good to be true, it usually has a manicure and a perfect blowout. Her name was Emily. Of course it was. There's always an Emily, or a Brooke, or something that sounds like it belongs on a monogram tote bag and a pilot's membership. She walked into my kitchen that Thanksgiving like she owned the place, in a cream sweater that somehow stayed spotless around gravy, and with that soft, practiced smile that said, "I'm harmless, you can trust me." My daughter-in-law smiled like an angel when she first met me. I didn't know that behind that smile was the cruelty that would destroy my family. One day I woke up and realized my own son believed every lie she told. The day they threw my suitcase onto the porch, I knew I had lost them both, but I hadn't lost myself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The devil's in the details, and this devil wore Chanel. Jeremy brought her in with his arm wrapped a little too tightly around her waist, like he was showing off a prize he'd won at the fair. Mom, this is Emily, he said, eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen since he was 10 and found $100 bill in a parking lot. Emily reached for my hand with both of hers, warm, gentle, just the right amount of pressure. Mrs. Carter, I've heard so much about you, she said, and that dress is gorgeous on you. Burgundy is really your color. Now, I may be 63, but I'm not dead. I know a well-aimed compliment when I hear one, and I also know when someone is scanning the room while they're giving it. Her eyes were everywhere: the walnut dining table, the crystal cabinet, the painting over the fireplace that my husband, David, had insisted was a good investment piece. Oh, it's just an old dress, I said, wiping my hands on my apron. And call me Lorraine. Mrs. Carter sounds like my mother-in-law. God rest her soul. Come in. Sit down. Did you bring an appetite, or are you one of those people who only eats air and positive thoughts? She laughed light, musical, just the right volume. Oh, I love food, she said, touching Jeremy's arm. Jeremy keeps telling me his mom is the best cook in the world. I've been excited about this all week. I almost choked on the word keeps. Jeremy hadn't visited in for weeks. The best cook in the world had been eating leftover soup and toast. But I smiled. That's what we mothers do. At least at first. We smile and hope. Dinner was smooth, too smooth. Emily helped carry plates, but never quite managed to be in the kitchen alone with me. Every time I turned around, she was tucked under Jeremy's arm in the living room, laughing at something he said, or talking to my husband about the market like she'd been on Wall Street since birth. Marketing director, she'd said earlier when I asked about her job. Tech firm. I handle strategy and branding. We just closed a multi-million-dollar campaign, 28 years old, high-power job, flawless teeth, and she'd chosen my son, who had a long-term relationship with our couch and my checking account. Sure, honey. And I'm Miss America. Still, I watched. That's what women my age are best at. We've spent decades observing who refills the water glasses, who pretends not to see the sink full of dishes, who listens when someone else speaks. Observation is a quiet superpower. And that night, every cell in my body was on alert. I noticed the first bathroom trip after dessert. Normal. She'd had 2 glasses of wine, light drinker, but not a prude. The second trip came 20 minutes later, when David and Jeremy were arguing about football and I was stacking plates. I'll just freshen up, she'd said, touching my shoulder lightly. Do you mind if I use the upstairs bathroom this time? The one Jeremy told me about with the big mirror? Your house is so beautiful. We have exactly one bathroom with a big mirror, and it's in my bedroom. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. Sure. Door at the end of the hall on the left. She smiled. all gratitude and innocence. Thank you, Lorraine. You're so kind. And there it was again, that smile. Shining, angelic, and just a little too aware of its own effect. You know what's funny? People think big tragedies arrive like storms, loud, obvious, crashing through the windows. In my experience, they show up on tiptoe, wearing perfume and asking to use your bathroom. The ring and the watch lived in a small safe in my closet. Not a big one, nothing dramatic and movie-worthy. Just a good, solid safe we'd bought years ago, the kind the insurance company insists on if you list anything of significant value. The ring was my great-grandmother's. Emerald, old-cut diamonds, heavy and delicate at the same time. The watch was David's obsession, a limited edition piece he'd bought in his 40s, the only reckless thing he'd ever done in his life. Together, they were worth several $100,000, according to the appraiser Jeremy insisted we see when he was 25 and suddenly interested in understanding the family assets. Funny, isn't it? What sticks in your memory later? The safe was never locked during the day when we were home. My mistake. I kept it latched but open, nestled behind a row of hanging blouses. Who would come into my bedroom and go through my things at a family Thanksgiving? Who indeed? They left around 10, arms full of leftovers. Emily gave me a hug at the door. She smelled faintly of jasmine and something sharper underneath. Thank you so much, Lorraine. This was perfect, she said. I really hope we can spend more time together. Family is everything to me. That last line should be carved on a stone somewhere. Family is everything to me. Almost every person who has ever betrayed me has used that sentence like a business card. When the door closed, I stood there a moment, listening to the silence. The house always felt oddly larger after they left, like their absence was another piece of furniture. David was already in his recliner, loosening his belt. Nice girl, he said. Classy. Keeps Jeremy in line too. Maybe she'll finally get him moving. I said, non-committal. I went upstairs to change. Habit. Clear the bedroom. Fold the tablecloth tomorrow. Wash the guest towels. I walked into my room and tugged my blouse off its hanger. That's when I saw it. The closet door was open a little wider than I'd left it. The safe was not latched. It was swung all the way open. First, I thought I'd done it. I'm old enough to know that not every mistake is a crime. Sometimes it's just menopause and a busy mind 50 times removed. I stepped closer, talking to myself. Lorraine, you probably left it open when you got the earrings this morning. Calm down. But the little black box that held my great-grandmother's ring was gone. The watch's velvet tray was empty. For one long second, my mind went blank white. No sound, no smell, just that hollowness. Then the details rushed back in Emily's second trip to the bathroom. The way she'd taken a little too long coming back. Jeremy's bragging about the appraisal years ago. The way her eyes had lingered on the painting and the crystal cabinet. No, I said aloud. No, no, no. I pulled everything out of the safe like a madwoman. Passports, documents, old brooches, the deed to the house. No ring, no watch. David. My voice came out high and sharp. David, come here, right now. He groaned from downstairs. Can it wait? The game now. He came up muttering, but one look at my face shut him right up. What happened? Are you okay? They're gone. I stepped aside, pointing at the open safe. The ring, the watch, they're gone. He frowned, leaned in, shuffled the papers as if they might be hiding beneath a tax return. You must have moved them. I did not move them. Maybe you put them somewhere safer. You've been talking about that for months. I thought about it. I snapped. I didn't do it. They were here. This morning. I checked before I put my earrings back. Then maybe Jeremy, oh please. I laughed bitter. Jeremy wouldn't climb the stairs to save his own life, let alone sneak into my closet. You saw Emily ask to use the upstairs bathroom, didn't you? His brows knitted. Lorraine, she was gone too long, and she knew where the money was, David. Jeremy told her. He talks too much when he wants to impress someone. You're being paranoid, am I? I gestured at the empty safe, because unless those diamonds grew legs and took themselves on a walk, someone took them. And the only person in this house today who hasn't known me for decades is your dear future daughter-in-law. He rubbed his face. She spent the whole evening with us, with your sister, with the kids except when she wasn't. I cut in. Twice. Alone. Upstairs. Near my bedroom. You can't accuse her of stealing Lorraine. Not without proof. I stared at him. My husband. The man I'd married at 22. The father of my son. A man who used to believe me when I told him the sky was blue. Something broke. Right there. Quietly. Like the snap of a hairpin. I'm not accusing, I said slowly. I'm stating facts. My jewelry was here. She went upstairs. Now it's gone, he sighed. That long, weary sigh men do when they're about to decide their comfort matters more than your reality. Let it go for tonight. You're tired. We've had wine. Tomorrow we'll look again. Look at what? I whispered. The empty space? When Jeremy came by the next day to pick up the pie dish Emily forgot, I tried to be calm. Jeremy, I said, catching him in the hallway. We need to talk. Sure, Mom. But I'm kind of in a hurry. Em's outside double parked. This won't take long. I walked him upstairs, heart pounding hard enough to make my vision blur. I opened the closet, showed him the gaping safe. You remember great-grandma's ring? I asked. The emerald one? And Dad's collector's watch? Yeah, he said, wary. They're gone. His head jerked back. What do you mean, gone? They were in this safe yesterday morning. After dinner, I came up and they were missing. He frowned at the safe, then at me. Maybe you moved them. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. Why is that the first thing you men say? Do you think at 63 I'm suddenly hiding my own jewelry from myself for fun? He shoved his hands in his pockets, a boy again for a second. Okay, so, someone stole them? Did Dad call the police? No, he doesn't want to make a scene until we're sure. I folded my arms, but I am sure. The only person in this house yesterday who hasn't known exactly where this safe is for years was Emily. And she went upstairs alone, twice. His jaw tightened. Mom. Don't mom me. I'm telling you what happened. Emily spent the whole evening with us, he said, repeating David's line almost word for word. She wouldn't steal from you. I remember clearly that she went to the bathroom twice and searched our house, I said, hearing the tremor in my own voice and hating it. I didn't want to believe it. But, you're wrong. His eyes flashed suddenly hard. You've never liked her, and now you're making up stories because some old jewelry box is empty. Maybe you misplaced it. Maybe one of the kids. Do not blame my grandchildren, I snapped. They wouldn't even know how to open that safe. He stepped back from me like I'd slapped him. Emily is not a thief. And I'm not crazy. We stared at each other, mother and son on opposite sides of a fault line that had been forming for years. Finally, he shook his head. I can't do this. I'm not going to go home and accuse my fiancé because you had a bad feeling. I'm sorry your stuff is missing, but don't drag Emily into it. He turned and walked downstairs. Jeremy. I called after him. Jeremy. Look at me. I am telling you the truth. He paused at the front door, hand on the knob. But he didn't turn around. You should talk to someone, Mom, he said quietly. About forgetting things, getting confused. Emily works with clients all the time who help their parents through this stuff. There are specialists. I went cold. Through what stuff? You know. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Aging, memory, paranoia. Paranoia. There it was. A neat little label to paste over my face so he wouldn't have to confront the possibility that the woman he loved might have sticky fingers and a heart like an ATM. He left. The door clicked shut with a small final sound. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, the house dark except for the light over the stove. David had gone to bed after another round of let's not jump to conclusions. The heirlooms were gone. My son didn't believe me. My husband thought I was overreacting. I stared at the empty chair where Jeremy used to sit as a boy and tell me about his science projects and his silly crushes, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone in my own family. But here's the thing about me. I may bend, I do not break. I didn't know yet that the ring and the watch were just the beginning. I didn't know that Emily wasn't content with jewelry, that she had her eyes on my savings, my house, my name, my sanity. I didn't know that one day they would throw my suitcase onto the porch like trash and tell me to leave my own home. All I knew, sitting there in the quiet November dark, was this. That girl had underestimated the wrong 63-year-old woman. And as God is my witness, I was going to find out exactly what she'd done. And make sure she lived to regret every last second of it. The thing about being robbed isn't the empty space where the valuables used to be. It's the empty space where trust used to live. After that Thanksgiving, time didn't march, it slithered. Jeremy started calling less. Emily started calling more. At first, it was charming. Hi Lorraine, it's Emily. I saw this recipe for sweet potato casserole and thought of you. Or, I just wanted to check in, see how you're feeling. Holidays can be stressful. Simple things, harmless, only they stacked up. like snowdrifts against the front door. 2 weeks after the ring disappeared, she invited me to lunch. Just us girls, she said on the phone, her voice light as meringue. I feel like we got off on the wrong foot, and I want to fix that. I really want us to be close. Now, I'm old, not stupid. My first instinct was to say no, but you don't start a war by refusing peace talks, even if the other side already stole your ammunition. So I said yes. We met at a trendy cafe downtown that thought chairs without backs were a good idea. She was already there, of course, perfectly timed, staring at her phone like she'd been waiting forever. Lorraine. She stood up, hugged me like I'd just returned from war. You look amazing. That scarf is so chic. It's from 1995, I said, back when I still wore heels on purpose. She laughed and touched my arm. You're so funny. We ordered salads that looked like a rabbit's fever dream. I moved cherry tomatoes around my plate and waited. She made small talk. Work, traffic, the weather, how Jeremy had so many talents that just needed the right direction. I almost asked if one of those talents included getting off our couch, but I let it slide. Finally, she sighed, put her fork down, and tilted her head in that practiced, sympathetic angle I would grow to hate. Lorraine, she said gently, I wanted to talk about the other day, when Jeremy came over. About the missing jewelry, I said. Yes, let's. She gave me a wounded look. I know you're upset. I would be too. But I want you to know Jeremy told me what you said. That you think I took something. I don't think, I said. I know my safe doesn't open and empty itself out of boredom. You were the only one upstairs. She nodded slowly, like a therapist delivering bad news. I hear that you feel that way. Oh, that phrase. I hear that you feel that way. Not I hear you. Not I understand. No, she just acknowledged that somewhere in the world, a feeling existed. I didn't take anything, she continued. I would never. My own grandmother's jewelry was stolen once, and it traumatized our whole family. I would never do that to someone else. I studied her. If she was lying, she was good. Academy Award good. But then, some people rehearse their whole lives. Then who did? I asked. We don't have a butler. No one broken. It's not complicated, dear. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. I think, maybe something else is going on. I raised an eyebrow. Such as? She took a breath, eyes shining with manufactured concern. Jeremy and we've noticed you seem a little frazzled lately, forgetting things, repeating yourself, getting really anxious over small mix-ups. I put my fork down carefully so I wouldn't jab it into her beautiful lying face. Sweetheart, I said, I have a full working memory. I remember exactly where I kept my ring. I remember exactly how long you were upstairs. And I remember the look on your face when you went into my room. Her cheeks flushed, just for a moment before she smoothed it away. I know this is hard to hear. My job. I work with a lot of older clients. Families who are going through changes with their parents. Cognitive changes, mood swings, paranoia. Sometimes it starts with misplacing things and blaming others. And sometimes it starts with a pretty stranger who knows where the money is. I shot back. For the first time, the angel slipped. Just a flicker in her eyes, a flash of cold steel beneath the powder. But she recovered fast. I'm not your enemy, Lorraine. I care about Jeremy, and I want you in our lives. That's why I'm willing to be the bad guy and bring this up, she sighed. I've seen what happens when families ignore this stuff. It gets ugly. People get hurt. I'm already hurt, I said. You just don't see the bruises because they're on my trust, not my skin. She dabbed delicately at the corner of her eye. If there was a tear, it was union regulated. I'm sorry you feel attacked, she whispered. I love your son. I want to build a life with him. And I don't want this to push us apart. Maybe you'd feel better if you talked to someone, a specialist, just to rule things out. Then we could all move forward, together. There it was, the strategy. Get me on record as confused, paranoid, maybe even early cognitive decline. Once that seed was planted, anything I said later could be dismissed as part of the fog. I looked at her and realized something important. This girl wasn't just greedy. She was strategic. I smiled slowly. You know, I said, that's very thoughtful of you. Her shoulders relaxed with the confidence of a woman who thought she'd won. So you'll think about it? I will, I said. And in the meantime, you'll forgive me if I keep my bedroom door locked when you visit. Just until we rule things out. The smile froze on her lips. The next few months were death by 1,000 kindnesses. Emily brought over pamphlets, resources for aging gracefully, She left them on the counter, all pastel covers and smiling silver-haired couples walking by lakes. She called David to check in on how he was managing stress at his age. She used her practice corporate voice. I've seen a lot of families struggle when one partner starts to decline. That word again. Decline. She accidentally rearranged my spice rack. Then later, when I couldn't find the paprika, she chuckled softly in front of David. Oh, Lorraine, we put that back in the cabinet last time, remember? No, we didn't. But now David looked at me with that worried, searching look that made my skin crawl. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found my checkbook on the coffee table, open to a blank page. Did you leave this out? David asked. No, I said. He frowned. Well, maybe you forgot. I hadn't forgotten. I also hadn't left the back door unlocked 2 days before, or put the car keys in the freezer, or forgotten to pay the gas bill. Yet all those things mysteriously happened after Emily stopped by just to bring muffins. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being managed. There's a saying, if you're wondering whether you're crazy, you're probably not. Crazy people don't question their sanity. Gaslit people do. The doctor's visit was the next big move. Just a checkup, David said one morning, standing in the kitchen with his coffee. Emily recommended this geriatric specialist. She says he's wonderful. Thought it might be good for you to get a full workup. At our age, at our age? I asked. You going to? He hesitated. Well, the appointment is under your name, but I can come with you, if you want. Emily made the appointment. She helped, he said. Of course she did. I went, not because I trusted the doctor, but because I wanted to see how far Emily planned to push this narrative. He was a polite man in his 50s, with kind eyes and that gentle, patronizing tone doctors save for children and old ladies. He did the usual blood pressure, reflexes, heart, lungs. Then he brought out the memory circus. I'm going to say a few words. You repeat them back to me. Then I'll ask you again later. I nailed every one of those tests. I repeated 7 digits backward. I named presidents in order. I drew his stupid little clock and put the hands at 10:45 sharp. If you want me to dance too, I'll need music, I said. He smiled. You're doing very well, Mrs. Carter. Tell that to my family, I muttered. He asked about stress, sleep, mood. I told him the truth. My ring and my husband's watch were stolen. My daughter-in-law thinks I'm senile. My son thinks I'm paranoid. My husband thinks I'm hormonal. Other than that, peachy. He made a note. Of course he did. At the end, he folded his hands. Medically, you're quite stable. Some normal age-related changes, but nothing alarming. I could have kissed him. So I'm not crazy, I said. He hesitated. I wouldn't use that word, but we do sometimes see perceptions shift when stress is high. There it was. Translate that from doctor into English, and you get, your brain is fine, but we're still going to leave room for them to doubt you. Would you be willing to share these results with my family? I asked. Of course, he said. With your consent. My enthusiastic consent, I said. Frame it, if you have to. You'd think that would have shut Emily down. You would be wrong. After the appointment, she hugged me in the parking lot like she'd just guided me through major surgery. I'm so proud of you, she said. Why? I asked. For not being defective? For taking this seriously, she said sweetly. And it's great news. Nothing serious yet. We caught it early. I stopped in my tracks. Caught what early? She gave me a pitying little smile. The doctor said age-related changes, Lorraine. That can still impact decision-making, finances, safety. It's okay. That's what family is for. I stared at her. So I passed the test, and you're still using it as evidence against me. That's not what I'm doing at all, she said, offended. I'm just saying we should make sure everything's in order. For your sake. Like, accounts, passwords, the house. It's better to organize now than in a crisis. And there it was, the money, peeking out from under her concern like a rat's tail. She continued, all helpful efficiency. Jeremy and I actually talked to David about this. It might be a good idea to add Jeremy to some of the accounts, just in case something happens. He can help manage things, take the load off you. You talked to David, I repeated slowly. About our accounts. Well, it's his stress too, right? She said. He worries about you. Oh, I bet he does, I thought. Because you put the fear in him. The next clue came in the form of a bank statement. I've always balanced my checkbook. Old habit. I like seeing the numbers, knowing where my money goes. It's like tracking footprints. One evening, I sat down with my cup of tea and the new statement. I scanned it, then stopped. There was a withdrawal I didn't recognize. A large one, $10,000, labeled, transfer to joint savings authorized signatory, Jeremy Carter. I felt my heart climb into my throat. David, I called. Did you move money? He came into the dining room wiping his hands on a dish towel. No, why? I pointed at the statement. Then would you like to explain this? He squinted, reached for his reading glasses and scanned the line. Oh, that, yeah. Jeremy moved some into the joint savings he set up. For emergencies. What joint savings? I asked. I did not set up a joint savings. He shifted his weight. Well, technically you did, last month. Remember? At the bank? I remembered going to the bank. I remembered Emily driving, saying she was taking me to lunch after I helped with something for Jeremy, some paperwork for the student loans he still hadn't quite sorted out. I remembered signing 3 or 4 forms she slid to me while she chattered about wedding plans. Had there been more papers? Another form? Had David signed something too? I did not agree to move $10,000 anywhere, I said. And Jeremy is not an authorized signatory on my accounts. David let out that same weary sigh. He is now. We added him when we were there, just as a precaution, Lorraine, in case something happens to us. Emily said, I cut in. Emily said, Emily suggested, Emily recommended. Since when did our marriage become a 3-person committee, with a chairwoman under 30? He bristled. You're overreacting. It's still our money. Jeremy's just helping manage it. By helping it out of our accounts? I snapped. He slammed his hand down on the table, and for a second I saw the young man I'd married, hot-tempered and stubborn. He's our son. He's going to inherit it anyway. What difference does it make if we give him some now? The difference, I said, voice shaking, is that I am still alive. And I did not agree. We glared at each other across the old oak table. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every signature, every conversation, every little favor Emily had asked. I felt like I was standing on ice, hearing cracks I couldn't see. The humiliation came next, quietly, casually. We had a small family dinner, just my sister, her husband, the grandkids, Jeremy, and Emily. I made roast chicken and potatoes, the usual comfort food. Halfway through, my sister asked, Lorraine, did you ever find that ring of your great-grandmother's? The emerald one? I opened my mouth, then closed it. My eyes flicked to Emily. She lowered her gaze, as if to say, oh dear, here we go. No, I said. It's still missing. My sister frowned. Did you ever call the police? They should at least know it's complicated. Emily cut in gently. We don't want to stress Lorraine. The doctor said stress can really affect memory. The table went quiet. What doctor? My sister asked. Oh, just a specialist we took her to, Emily said, with a fond little smile in my direction. Nothing serious yet, just some age-related changes. It's normal. We love her and we're here for her. Yet, I repeated. Emily reached for my hand. It's okay, Lorraine. You don't have to be embarrassed. I pulled my hand back slowly. Embarrassed about what exactly? Being robbed? Mom, Jeremy said sharply. We've talked about this. Yes, I said. And you've chosen to believe a woman you've known for 1 year over the mother who raised you for 30. My sister looked between us, confused. What's going on? Emily's eyes filled instantly. I never wanted to cause tension, she whispered. I care so much about this family. But ever since the ring went missing, Lorraine has been, well, different, suspicious, accusatory. She thinks I stole it, she added, her voice breaking on cue. My sister's husband cleared his throat awkwardly. The grandkids stared at their plates. I don't think you stole it, I said, my voice low. I think you're lying. I know you went into my room. I know my safe was open. I know what was there before and what wasn't after. Silence. Then Emily dabbed at her eyes. I understand why you're scared, she said softly. Losing something valuable like that, it's traumatic. The mind does strange things when it's trying to make sense of a loss. Jeremy put his arm around her. You don't have to defend yourself, baby. If I hadn't been so furious, I would have laughed. David cleared his throat. Maybe we should change the subject. No, I said. Maybe we should change the locks. There it was, my line in the sand. Small, but real. Emily looked hurt. If you don't want us to come over anymore, just say so, she whispered. I met her gaze. I don't want you in my bedroom. or near my safe, or near my bank statements. And I sure as hell don't want you rewriting my mind in front of my family." The kids stared, wide-eyed. My sister looked like she'd swallowed a fork. Jeremy stood abruptly. "You're making a scene," he snapped. "This is exactly what the doctor was talking about. Mood swings, paranoia." "The doctor did not say I was paranoid," I said. "He said I'm very nearly perfect." "No one said that," Emily murmured. "You're twisting things again." "Twisting things is your area of expertise," I shot back. Emily flinched, then turned her face into Jeremy's chest, shoulders shaking. "I tried," she whispered. "I really tried." He stroked her hair, glaring at me over her head. "We're leaving." He ushered her out the door, my son shielding the thief from the woman who'd bought his first pair of sneakers. When the door closed, my sister exhaled. "Lorraine," she said carefully, "are you okay?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, Maggie, I'm not okay, but I'm also not crazy. And I'm not wrong. You should keep an eye on your accounts," she said quietly. "Just in case." "Oh, I will," I said. "And a lot more than that." A few days later, I found the papers. They were in the file cabinet in the study, tucked between insurance documents and old mortgage statements. I hadn't gone looking for them, I was hunting for our tax records. But there they were, a neat little stack of photocopies, my signature, David's, and at the bottom of one page, addition of secondary co-owner, Jeremy Carter. Another page, home equity line of credit approved, large number, very large. My breath left me. There was a line labeled intended use of funds. Next to it, in Emily's tidy corporate handwriting, home repairs, medical contingencies, wedding expenses, wedding expenses. I sat down hard on the edge of the desk chair, the room tilting for a moment. I remembered the day at the bank, Emily driving, Emily talking, Emily sliding forms under my hand while the banker droned on. David beside me, nodding, trusting. Me distracted, tired, thinking we were just updating emergency contacts like she said. They hadn't just opened an account. They'd put our house on the table like a poker chip. I stared at the numbers, at my own careful signature, and realized with a cold shock, by the time I caught up to what Emily was doing, she was already miles ahead. And if I didn't start playing her game better, smarter, older, I was going to lose more than a ring and a watch. I was going to lose everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while David snored softly beside me, blissfully unaware that our home, our sanctuary of 37 years, had been turned into collateral for a wedding we weren't even invited to help plan. The betrayal sat in my chest like a stone. Not Emily's. I expected nothing less from a woman who could cry on command. No. The real knife came from David, from Jeremy, from the men who were supposed to protect me, not hand me over like a business transaction. By sunrise, exhaustion had hardened into something colder, something sharp, resolve. I got up, made a pot of coffee strong enough to melt brass, and sat at the kitchen table with the documents spread out like battlefield maps. I reread every line until the shock burned off and strategy kicked in. Emily had gotten this far because she counted on me being passive, polite, older, soft around the edges. She had no idea the woman she was dealing with had survived raising a child through the 90s, a house fire, a cheating neighbor's scandal that got half the PTA expelled, and menopause. I wasn't soft. I was seasoned, and I was done playing defenseless. The first battle was with David. When he came into the kitchen that morning, rubbing sleep from his eyes, I didn't bother with niceties. "Sit," I said, pointing to the chair across from me. He blinked. "What's going on?" I slid the papers across the table. His face changed as he read. First confusion, then recognition, then the faintest hint of guilt. "Lorraine," he started. "We talked about this." "No," I cut in. "You and Emily talked about it. You and Jeremy talked about it. I was there physically, yes. But I didn't agree to put our home at risk. I didn't agree to let Jeremy access our accounts. I didn't agree to fund their wedding or their emergencies or their lifestyle." "It's not like that," he said. "It is exactly like that." He opened his mouth again, but I held up a hand. "No more excuses," I said. "We're past that." David exhaled loudly, shoulders slumping. "Lorraine, you know I'd never do anything to hurt you." "You didn't," I said. "Emily did. You only helped." He winced. "Well, what do you want me to say?" he asked. "I thought it was for the best. I thought you thought Emily was telling the truth," I finished. "About me, about the doctor, about the ring, about everything." He didn't answer. That was worse than denial. I leaned back in my chair, feeling older than 63, feeling centuries older than the woman who fed me lies with blueberry muffins and fox kindness. David, I said softly, I need you to understand something. I am not losing my mind. I am not confused. I am not declining. I tapped the papers. But we are losing our financial security because you let a stranger convince you that I didn't know what I was doing. He swallowed hard. Maybe we rushed it, he said finally. We can talk to Jeremy. We can. No, I said. We can't talk to Jeremy. That boy is wrapped so tightly around that girl's finger he's practically a manicure. David cracked the smallest smile. It didn't reach his eyes. What do you want to do? He asked. I looked at the stack of forms. Damage control. But I knew even that wouldn't be enough. Not yet. The next step was the bank. I drove myself, no Emily chauffeuring me like some fragile relic. I walked straight into the branch, asked to speak to the manager, and sat down at her desk with my spine straighter than it had been in years. My name is Lorraine Carter, I said, and I need to revoke access to a secondary account holder who was added under false pretenses. The manager, a polished woman in her 40s, frowned. Do you mean fraud? I mean manipulation, I said. But if fraud makes the paperwork easier, feel free to use it. She blinked at me, then straightened. Can you explain what happened? Oh, absolutely, I said sweetly. And I brought documents. I slid everything onto her desk. She read, slowly, thoroughly. Her expression shifted several times: concern, surprise, distaste. Mrs. Carter, she said at last, did you understand you were adding your son as a co-owner? No, I said, because that's not what I was told. I see. She sat back, folding her hands. This is concerning, but your signatures are here. I know, I said calmly, and that's why I'm here. I'm not contesting the documents. I'm contesting how they were obtained. She tapped a pen against the folder. We take elder financial exploitation very seriously. I smiled tightly. Well, lucky for you. I don't consider myself elderly, just exploited. That made her laugh, but her eyes stayed serious. Here's what I can do, she said. We can freeze the joint account until all parties agree on next steps. We can flag unusual activity. And we can remove your son if your husband also signs a request. And if he doesn't, she hesitated, then the account stands as is. So Emily had built herself a little fortress. A fortress held up by my husband's signature. I left the bank with a frozen account, a stack of printouts, and the knowledge that my marriage was now a battleground. Things escalated after that, not loudly, not explosively, quietly. The way mold grows behind walls until one day you put your hand out and the plaster caves in. Jeremy stopped coming over entirely. David became moody, distant, irritated whenever the topic of Emily came up. She's just trying to help, he kept saying. You're too hard on her. I wanted to scream. She stole from us. She's still stealing from us. She's turning our son against me, one kind smile at a time. But screaming wouldn't fix it. Emily didn't attack with noise. She attacked with narrative. So I changed tactics. I stopped arguing, stopped defending, stopped trying to prove myself. Instead, I observed. I listened. I kept notes. Every time I found a cabinet rearranged, a bill moved, a document missing, a comment twisted, I wrote it down. Every call she made to David just to check on me, I logged it. Every financial change I hadn't authorized, I filed it. Because here's the thing about people like Emily. They're excellent at creating illusions, but they're terrible at covering tracks when someone stops reacting emotionally and starts tracking patterns. And oh, did I start tracking? The breaking point, the moment everything cracked open, came in April. It was a Saturday afternoon. Soft rain tapping at the windows. My favorite weather for baking. I was in the kitchen making oatmeal cookies for the grandkids, humming to myself, feeling not peaceful exactly, but steady. Then the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands and opened the door. Jeremy stood there. Beside him was Emily. Between them was a suitcase. My suitcase. My heart dropped like a stone thrown in a well. What's going on? I asked. Jeremy didn't look at me. Mom, he said flatly, we need to talk. Emily stepped forward, all gentle concern. Lorraine, we're worried about you. Oh, are you? Yes, she said quietly. Your doctor recommended monitoring. And after everything that's happened, we think it's best if you stay with us for a little while. I beg your pardon? She touched the suitcase. Just until we get everything sorted out. The stress here isn't good for you. And your safety, my safety? I repeated. We found the gas stove on last week. Jeremy said. You could have burned the house down. I turned the kettle on, I corrected. David was in the room. Ask him. Dad already told us, Jeremy said. He's overwhelmed too. Overwhelmed. That word landed like a slap. Emily continued. We're not asking. We're helping. Helping. Helping by standing on my doorstep with my own suitcase like they were evicting a tenant. I looked at Jeremy. My boy. My baby. My grown man who used to bring me dandelions and broken toy cars to fix. Did you pack this yourself? I asked. He gave a small, ashamed nod. I felt something inside me turn cold. Very cold. Let me be perfectly clear, I said softly. I am not going anywhere. Mom, no, I said. You listen to me now. Emily stepped forward. Lorraine, please. I turned my eyes on her and she stopped mid-sentence. You, I said, have taken enough from me, but you will not take my home. Emily opened her mouth, but I kept going. And you, I said, turning to Jeremy, have made your choice. And you have chosen very, very poorly. I stepped back into the house, reached out, and closed the door. Not slammed, closed. The quiet kind of final. I locked it, slowly, deliberately. Through the door, I heard Emily's voice. We tried, Jeremy. We really tried. Then silence. Then footsteps. Then nothing. I stood there, staring at the door, breathing hard. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was not. That was the day I realized something important. I had lost them both, but I had not lost myself. And now that the door had closed literally and metaphorically, I was free to plan without fear of hurting their feelings. Because I was done being hurt. Emily thought she'd won. Jeremy thought he was rescuing his poor aging mother from herself. But they had no idea I had just decided to walk away from both of them. Not in defeat, in strategy. Because you can't save someone who doesn't want saving, but you can sure as hell save yourself. And that was the day I began planning my rise. The Monday after the suitcase incident, I woke up with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. The storm had passed inside me not because things calmed down, but because they'd finally exploded. I knew I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. Not from violence. Emily wasn't the type to throw punches, but from erosion. Quiet erosion. Psychological, financial, emotional. The kind of erosion that turns stone into dust while you're busy wondering why the landscape looks different. And here's something most people don't understand. Walking away isn't always a sign of surrender. Sometimes it's the first step of a counterattack. The first thing I did was call my sister Maggie. She answered on the second ring. Lorraine, are you all right? I heard from Karen that Jeremy stormed out of your house with Emily the other day, Maggie. I said, I need a place to stay. There was a beat of silence, followed by, I'll make up the guest room. I could have cried, but I didn't. I hadn't given Emily tears, and I wasn't going to give them to relief either. David wasn't home. He'd gone to play golf with his brother, blissfully unaware that his wife was packing her life into 2 suitcases that actually belonged to her this time. I packed the essentials, clothes, photos, the few documents I still controlled, and my grandmother's recipe book. Everything else could stay. A house is walls and floors. A home is what you carry with you. I wrote David a note. Just one line. I'm giving you space to decide whose story you believe. I left it on the kitchen table, locked the front door behind me, and drove away without looking back. I didn't need to. The rearview mirror was full enough with memories. Maggie's house was warm the way only a sister's house can be, crowded with mismatched quilts, pictures of our parents, and a cinnamon smell that clung to the walls forever. She hugged me like she was afraid I might disappear. You should have come sooner. I thought I could fix it, I said. You can't fix brainwashing, she replied. You can only duck while it spins. She poured me coffee and added 2 sugars, what I used to take before Emily started commenting on caloric awareness. We sat at the table as rain tapped the windows, and I finally told her everything. Not just the ring, not just the doctor visit, not just the bank, everything. She listened without interrupting once. That's the thing about older sisters. They're like living, breathing confessionals with better judgment. When I finished, she let out a slow whistle. That girl is running a long con. She's running it on all 3 of us, I said. And she's good. Maggie's jaw hardened. Well, she's not good enough. I smiled for the first time in days. I had allies, actual allies, non-manipulated, non-hypnotized allies, and with allies came a spark of something dangerous, hope. My rise began quietly. I didn't go home. I didn't call Emily to defend myself. I didn't beg Jeremy for a conversation. I went to work. Except surprise, I didn't have a job. I had retired at 60, thinking I'd spend my golden years volunteering, gardening, and spoiling grandchildren. But the golden years had turned out a little rusted, so I updated my RSUM yes at 63 and applied to a part-time administrative role at the local community center. When the director called me in for an interview, she squinted at my employment gap. "You haven't worked in 3 years. I've been dealing with family," I said. She nodded knowingly. "Say no more." She asked how I was with scheduling. "Better than a flight controller." "Filing? My spice cabinet is alphabetized. So are my regrets." "Phone calls? I've been the designated adult on every family crisis hotline for 40 years. She snorted. "You're hired." Just like that. My first paycheck was nothing glamorous, small, modest, sensible. But when I held it in my hands, something in my chest lit up. Not pride, not joy, not even relief. Independence. The kind Emily couldn't freeze, sign away, or accidentally restructure with a banking form. My new life grew in layers. First came the job, then came the people. The community center was full of retirees who signed up for pottery, yoga, ballroom dancing, women with stories, humor, and more grit than a gravel driveway. I found my tribe, women who weren't old, just classic. They listened when I shared snippets of what had happened, not the full saga, just bits. They didn't say, "Poor you." They said, "Oh no, she didn't. What's that girl's address? Next time she tries something, call me, I'll bring witnesses." One of them, Valerie, took my hand and said, "Honey, betrayal is like menopause. You don't want it, you don't ask for it, but by God does it teach you things." I nearly choked laughing. These women didn't pity me. They understood me. They reminded me I wasn't insane, incompetent, or declining. I was just transitioning from one chapter to another, and the next chapter was shaping up quite nicely. The more my life stabilized, the more Emily seemed to panic. She called me. I didn't answer. She texted, "We're worried. David is upset. Jeremy can't sleep. Let us help you." I ignored her. Then she emailed me a PDF titled "Healthy Boundaries for Aging Parents." I deleted it so hard I think sparks might have flown. But the real twist came from David. One evening he called, not in anger, not in self-righteousness, in fear. "Lorraine," he said, "we got a notice from the bank." My pulse ticked up. "What kind of notice?" "About the freeze," he said quietly, "and about the HELOC. The bank flagged it for irregular activity." "Well, that's interesting," I said calmly. "Irregular like unauthorized?" I don't know," he said. "Jeremy says we agreed to everything." "And what do you say?" Silence. Then, very quietly, "I don't remember agreeing to half of what's on these papers." A pause. A long one. "Lorraine, did Emily trick us?" It was the first crack. A hairline fracture in the fod she'd built. "Yes," I said simply. "She did." "Why would she do that?" "Oh, David," I sighed. "You don't see it yet, but you will." He didn't answer for a moment. Then, "Will you come home so we can talk?" "No," I said, "but you're welcome to come to Maggie's if you want the truth." Another silence. Then a defeated, "Okay." He didn't show up that night, but the invitation had been extended. I had patience now, and power, and a rising life that didn't hinge on whether my husband grew a backbone. But while my life was getting sturdier, Emily's grip on her empire began slipping. I didn't have to do a thing. That's the beauty of letting snakes coil themselves into knots. They strangle their own schemes. It started with a rumor. A tiny, delicious rumor that floated into the community center from a woman whose cousin worked at the tech firm where Emily was supposedly a marketing director. Apparently, Emily wasn't a director at all. She wasn't even full-time. She was on a 3-month contract, unrenewed. Budget restructuring, she'd told Jeremy. In reality, she'd been let go for inappropriate internal conduct. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew this. Emily was slipping. Her fod had cracks. And I was finally in a safe enough place physically, financially, emotionally to watch, wait, and gather evidence of everything she'd done. Because I wasn't just rising, I was preparing. Because while I didn't intend to destroy her life, I did intend to reveal the truth. And the truth, once unleashed, has a habit of shredding liars all on its own. My life was rebuilding. Her life was unraveling. And somewhere in the middle, Jeremy would realize too late what he'd chosen. But that part of the story, that downfall, oh, that was coming. And I intended to savor every second. If you've ever watched a woman like Emily start to lose control, you know it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in whispers, The first whisper came from the community center. The second came from Maggie's friend Karen, who worked at the local boutique where Emily used to shop with Jeremy's credit card. But the third whisper? Oh, that one came straight to my doorstep, delivered by the universe like a gift-wrapped apology for the months I'd spent doubting myself. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just come home from work at the community center, still wearing my name badge and carrying a box of donated yarn from the knitting club. The average age of that club is 78, and their gossip could power a small town. As I set the box down in Maggie's entryway, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, raised an eyebrow, and silently mouthed, "David." I nodded for her to answer. "Hello?" she said. "Yes, she's here." One moment. She handed me the phone. I took a breath, preparing for anything from accusations to apologies to passive-aggressive weather updates, but his voice was quiet, too quiet. "Lorraine," he said, "I think something is very wrong." I leaned against the counter. "With what?" He hesitated. "With Emily." Well, welcome to the party, David. Kindly grab a chair and a clue." "What happened?" I asked. There's money missing." My heart ticked once, sharp. "Missing from where?" "From the joint savings," he said, "and from our emergency fund." "And the home equity line, David," I said carefully. "Say the number." He exhaled shakily. 52,000. I closed my eyes. Not from shock, I had been expecting this, but from the confirmation. The cold, hard truth finally stepping into the light. "And where do you think it went?" I asked. Silence. Then, I confronted her. "And she said it was for wedding expenses." $52,000? I said. "Is she commissioning a chapel carved from solid gold? Or having the Pope flown in on a private jet?" She said she needed to invest in certain arrangements ahead of time, and that we agreed. But Lorraine, I don't remember agreeing to anything. There it was, the real fracture. "What did Jeremy say?" I asked. "He defends her," he said, voice tight. "Says she's planning everything. Says I must have forgotten signing some things." Forgotten. There's that word again. "And you?" I asked quietly. "I didn't forget," he said. "I wasn't there. I checked the documents she claimed I signed. My signature doesn't match. Not even close." My eyebrows shot up. "Forged?" "I don't know," he whispered, "but I'm starting to wonder." I leaned forward. "David, listen to me. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you." "I know," he said. "I know, and I'm sorry. I should have believed you." There it was. The apology I didn't ask for. The apology I didn't need. The apology I still deserved. Before I could respond, he continued, his voice fraying at the edges. "And there's something else, Lorraine. Something worse." "Worse?" "She refinanced the car." "What?" "The SUV," he said. "Our SUV. She refinanced it under her name and Jeremy's. Yesterday." "That's impossible," I said. "You and I co-own that vehicle." "I know," he said weakly. "She told them you'd signed a transfer. She had the paperwork." My grip on the phone tightened. "Paperwork I never signed." "Yes, David," I said slowly. "She's not just manipulating. She's committing crimes." "I think so too." For the first time, fear trembled in his voice. "Lorraine, you need to come home. We need to handle this together." I closed my eyes and realized something large, painful, and liberating. I wasn't going home. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because home wasn't a structure anymore. It was wherever I was heard, seen, safe. "David," I said gently, "I'll help you. But I'm not moving back until the truth is exposed. All of it." He swallowed. "Then help me figure out what to do, please." And that was new. David asking for help. David admitting he'd been duped. David choosing me over her for once. "All right," I said. "We're going to proceed carefully." I hung up and turned to Maggie, who had been pretending not to listen but failing spectacularly. "Well?" she asked. "It's happening," I said. "Her unraveling." Maggie folded her arms, a satisfied glint in her eye. "Good." For the next week, I met with a financial advisor recommended by one of the ballroom dancing ladies who had gone through something similar with her late husband and his adorable but suspicious nurse. Together, we combed through every account, every transfer, every signature. I had documentation. I had timelines. I had proof of manipulation. And here's the thing about patterns: they tell stories. Emily's story was starting to read like a crime novel. The advisor pointed at one line. "This withdrawal wasn't just unauthorized. It was illegal." I nodded. "I know. And here," he continued, "this refinancing? This is fraudulent." I know. And this signature? He held up a photocopy. This isn't yours. This isn't even a good forgery. I raised an eyebrow. She's slipping. The advisor leaned back. You have enough to bring in a lawyer, possibly even law enforcement. I nodded once. I know. But I wasn't ready for that step yet. Not until the final piece fell into place. Because I didn't just want justice. I wanted clarity for everyone involved. I wanted Jeremy to see the truth with his own eyes. I wanted David to understand the magnitude of the betrayal. I wanted Emily's house of cards to collapse from her own hands. I wasn't going to destroy her life. She was doing that herself. All I planned to do was open the windows and let the wind in. The unraveling accelerated to days later. I was at the community center when my phone rang. The caller ID said unknown, but the tone was unmistakable. Lorraine, Emily's voice. Soft, shaky, but not the practiced tremble she used for sympathy. This one was real. What do you want? I asked. Silence. Then a breathy, strained whisper. Did you talk to David? Yes, I said. Another breath. One that sounded like a balloon deflating slowly. I think, she said, there's been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Which part? The forged signature? The missing money? The car you refinanced? Or the fact you tried to have me committed to my own son's spare bedroom? Lorraine, she said sharply, this isn't funny. Oh, I replied, I assure you I'm not laughing. She tried to regain composure. We need to meet, just you and me. No, I said. I'm done meeting with you. I'm done explaining myself to you. I'm done being mother-in-law gaslighting practice. Her voice hardened. If you don't meet with me, things will get complicated. I almost admired her nerve. Emily, I said calmly, things are already complicated. For you. Silence. Then she snapped, the sweetness gone, the veneer shattered. Do you know what you're doing? She hissed. You think you're clever, but you're nothing. You're an old woman with a dead career and no influence. And click. I hung up. Maggie, sitting across from me with her embroidery hoop, raised an eyebrow. Well, she flinched. I said, the thought is gone. Good. That evening, David came to Maggie's house. He looked older than when I'd left. Tired, lost, like a man who finally realized the wolf wasn't outside, it was sleeping in his living room wearing a cashmere sweater. He sat across from me at the dining table, twisting his hands. Lorraine, he said, I don't know how to undo this. You don't have to, I said. We will do it together. His eyes filled not with tears, but with the shame of a man who knows he failed the person who stood beside him for 40 years. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have seen what she was doing. I should have believed you. I nodded. You should have. Then I placed my hand over his. But you see it now, and that matters. He exhaled shakily, gripping my fingers. Tell me what to do, he said. And I did. The next day, we took the plan into motion. A plan that involved a financial freeze, a lawyer, documentation, and one major step. We invited Jeremy and Emily for a talk. Neutral ground, a public place. No yelling, no accusations, just truth. The kind of truth that lights an entire forest on fire. Because the final showdown was coming. And Emily? She had no idea she was stepping into an ambush of her own making. The daughter-in-law's downfall had begun. I chose the location for the showdown very carefully. A neutral place, a public place, a place where Emily's temper couldn't flare without an audience and where Jeremy couldn't storm out without hearing at least the first 5 minutes of truth. So we picked the Maple Room, a quiet cafe near the courthouse with big windows, wooden booths, and lemon poppy seed muffins so good you momentarily forget your family is collapsing. David and I arrived early. He looked nervous, pale. His hands kept flexing like he wasn't sure whether to fight or flee. Lorraine, he murmured, leaning close. Is this the right thing? It's the only thing, I said. He nodded and looked out the window. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. 10 minutes later, Jeremy walked in with Emily. She looked thinner, not physically, emotionally. Her edges sharp, her smile tight, her eyes darting around as if searching for the narrative she'd lost. Jeremy looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, jaw clenched, a man torn in half and afraid to admit which half was already dead. Mom, he said stiffly. Dad, sit, I said. Emily slid into the booth across from me like she was entering a deposition she planned to charm her way out of. We're here, she said. Let's talk like adults. Oh, sweetheart, I replied. I've been talking like an adult this entire time. You're just finally out of excuses. Her nostrils flared subtly but enough. Jeremy shot her a warning look. Let's just listen, okay? For the first time, I saw something crack between them. Not visibly, but the tension was there, thin as glass. I placed the folder on the table. Yellow, bulky, filled with the evidence she thought I was too old, too confused, too emotional to gather. Emily, I said, sliding it toward her. This is for you. She hesitated. What is this? Documentation, I said. Every unauthorized withdrawal, every forged signature, every refinance, every bank complaint, every voicemail you left trying to lure me into admitting I was mentally declining. Jeremy's head jerked toward her. What? He whispered. She didn't answer, didn't open the folder, didn't move, just stared at it like it was a bomb. Go on, I said softly. It won't explode. She didn't touch it, so I continued. First, the $52,000 you took from the Helic. Not wedding expenses, not emergencies. You transferred it into an account under your name. Emily stiffened. That's not second, I said, louder. The refinance on the SUV. You forged David's signature. And badly, I might add. You even misspelled our street name on one of the forms. A muscle twitched in her jaw. Third, I said, placing another sheet in front of them. Your job. Her eyes snapped to mine. I know you lost it, I said. Contract not renewed. For inappropriate internal conduct. Your firm didn't name details, but gossip travels faster than email. Jeremy looked stunned. Emily, why didn't you tell me? She ignored him. I pressed on. Fourth, the missing jewelry. My great-grandmother's ring. David's collector's watch. Appraised at over $200,000. Both disappeared the night you were alone upstairs. Emily's voice came out tight. You can't prove that. Oh, but I can, I said, leaning in. Because that watch, a one-of-a-kind collector's edition, was photographed on your Instagram 3 months later. Jeremy turned to her so fast I thought he might strain his neck. You said that was a gift from your uncle, he whispered. Emily swallowed. Hard. It was ours, I said. And you posted it because thieves always reveal themselves when they're proud. She froze. Completely. Jeremy stared at her like she was a stranger he'd found in the wrong house wearing his clothes. Emily, he said, voice trembling. What did you do? I did nothing, she snapped, finally cracking. Your mother is framing me. I laughed. A quiet, sharp sound. The kind that has teeth. Darling, I said, I don't need to frame you. You built this picture yourself. Emily's face contorted, anger fighting panic. Panic fighting calculation. You're twisting everything, she hissed. You're old and vindictive and bitter. Careful, I said. Age discrimination in a cafe with this many witnesses might not be the smartest move. She slammed her hand on the table. You want to ruin my life? Oh no, I said calmly. You did that yourself. I'm just here to narrate the ending. David finally stepped in, voice steady but low. Emily, he said, we've already met with a financial attorney. Her face drained of color. And the bank, he added. She swallowed. And the police, he finished quietly. Jeremy inhaled sharply. The police? Emily looked at him with wide, wounded eyes, her favorite weapon. Baby, she whispered. You know I'd never stop, he said, shaking his head. Just stop. He pushed the yellow folder toward her. Tell me what this is, he said. Tell me why my name is on all of it. And that right there was the moment she broke. Not dramatically, not loudly, but with a tiny, involuntary twitch of her lip, a micro-expression of pure, unfiltered guilt. I saw it. David saw it. And Jeremy, God bless his finally awakening soul, saw it too. No, he whispered, pulling his hand back from hers. No, you didn't. Emily's voice cracked. I did it for us. No, Jeremy said again, louder, shaking his head. No, you didn't. Because a son who once defended her against me had finally recognized the truth. He looked at me with eyes full of the kind of regret that cuts deeper than betrayal. Mom, I'm so sorry. I stared at him and felt exactly nothing. Not anger, not triumph, not victory, nothing. Because apologies don't mend what was intentionally broken, but they do mark the beginning of consequences. Emily stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I don't have to sit here and be attacked. I'll get my own lawyer. You'll see. You should, I said. You'll need one. She glared at me with a hatred so intense it could have scorched the table. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out of the cafe. Jeremy didn't follow her. He stayed seated, shoulders slumped, staring at the evidence of the woman he'd chosen over his mother. Finally, he whispered, What do I do now? I reached for my coffee, took a slow sip, and said, "You face the truth." He closed his eyes. "And you live with it, David." And I left without looking back. I didn't comfort Jeremy. I didn't reassure him. I didn't soften the blow. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. And this one? This was graduate level betrayal. As we stepped into the sunlight, David took my hand, a gesture we hadn't shared in months. "Lorraine," he said, voice thick, "I am so sorry." I squeezed his hand, not forgiving, not healing, not yet, but acknowledging we were no longer on opposite sides of the battlefield. "We're not done," I said. "Not by a long shot. Whatever comes next," David said, "I'm with you." And I believed him, because Emily may have fractured our family, but she had also revealed its weak points, and now, we were reinforcing them, together, strong, prepared. Her downfall had begun, but my rise? Oh honey, it was just getting started. I've learned something in my 63 years on this wild, spinning planet. Some storms arrive to destroy your life. Others arrive to expose who built flimsy houses. Emily's house, her kingdom of manipulation, whispered lies, and forged papers, was already tilting by the time she stormed out of the maple room. All I had to do was stop holding it up. And oh, did it fall? The fallout began the very next morning. David and I were sitting at Maggie's kitchen table, me with my strong tea, him with his newspaper he wasn't really reading, when his phone buzzed. He looked down, frowned, then handed it to me. "Jeremy." She left. I stared at the screen, then passed the phone back. David cleared his throat. "Left where?" "She moved out," I said. "Or she ran." That's what people do when the truth catches up. Not 5 minutes later, a second message came. Longer, desperate. "Jeremy, she took her things and went to stay with a coworker. She says she needs space. She says she's being unfairly persecuted. Mom, I don't know what to do." Poor boy. He wasn't innocent. He'd let himself be swayed, blinded, manipulated, but he wasn't malicious. Just painfully naive. A deer wandering into a tiger's den because the tiger had perfect hair and said all the right things. David looked at me over his glasses. "We should talk to him." I shook my head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because he needs to sit in it," I said. "He needs to feel the consequences. You don't rescue someone from a lesson life finally managed to drill through their skull." David nodded slowly. "You're right. I usually am," I said. "But thank you for noticing." He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound felt like something old and familiar waking up between us. By Thursday, Emily's unraveling had gone public. And no, I didn't orchestrate a smear campaign. I didn't need to. Truth travels fast when the liar forgets to keep all their lies straight. Karen, the boutique friend, called Maggie in a whisper so loud it nearly blew out the receiver. "Have you heard? Emily's been banned from a jewelry store downtown. Apparently she tried to sell a high-value ring with no provenance and got caught lying about where it came from." Maggie's eyes widened. I shrugged. Of course she tried to sell it. Of course she got caught. Thieves always get greedy. Greed makes them sloppy. Sloppy gets them exposed. But that wasn't even the most delicious part. That came on Saturday. I was at the community center, helping set up for the gardening club's plant exchange, old women and succulents, a lethal combination, when Valerie came bustling in with her sunglasses shoved into her hair and a grin so wide it could light the county. "Lorraine Carter," she declared, "you are not going to believe what I just heard." "Oh, I think I might," I said. She plopped into a chair. "A friend of mine works in HR at that tech firm where Emily used to pretend she was a director." Guess what she said? I leaned forward. "Tell me everything." "Well," Valerie announced, hands on hips, "turns out Miss Perfect was fired because she was caught falsifying campaign results and using client information to leverage a job opportunity at a competitor. And when that blew up, she tried to blame the junior employees. HR launched an investigation. That's why she didn't get rehired." I whistled softly. "So she was a fraud everywhere." "Oh honey," Valerie said, patting my arm, "she's a professional at it. And now unemployed." I asked. "Very," Valerie said with relish. "And reputation tarnished. And guess what else?" "What?" "She tried to use your jewelry as proof of financial stability on a rental application." I laughed so loud half the gardening club looked over. "Oh, Emily," I murmured, "you beautiful, reckless criminal." Valerie shook her head. "I don't know how you stayed so calm through all this." "Oh, I wasn't calm," I said. "I was patient. And patience is a weapon most people underestimate." Jeremy showed up that evening. Maggie saw his car through the front window and called out, "Lorraine, he's here." I put down my book, took a slow breath, and stepped onto the porch. My son stood at the foot of the steps, hands in his pockets, eyes heavy with guilt. Mom. I waited. He swallowed. You were right. I nodded because there was no joy in saying I told you so to your child when the truth had already beaten him bloody. He continued, voice cracking. She admitted it. Not all of it, she kept lying, but when I pushed, she said she borrowed the money. Borrowed. His hands clenched. She said she did it because she was afraid I'd leave her if she didn't show she could build a life with me. That's not borrowing, I said. That's manipulation. He wiped his face. She said you hated her, that you were jealous of her, that you were trying to break us up. That's also manipulation, I said. He looked up at me, eyes red. Why didn't I see it? Because you wanted to love someone, I said gently. And she used that. He came up the steps, stood in front of me like he had when he was 5 and broke his toy truck and wanted me to fix it. Mom, I'm so sorry. I treated you horribly. I chose her over you. I doubted you. I even thought his voice broke. I even thought you were losing your mind. I met his eyes. Steady, strong, unmoved. Jeremy, I said, apologies don't rebuild trust. He nodded tearfully. I know, but they can start the process, I added. He looked startled, then hopeful. Can we fix this? I placed a hand on his cheek softly, but not softly enough to let him think everything was back to normal. We'll fix it, I said, but not overnight, and not by pretending it never happened. He nodded. Where's Emily now? I asked. He exhaled. She tried to go to her coworker's place, but they found out she'd lied to them too. She has nowhere to go. Actions, I said, have destinations. He stared at me. Do we call the police? That's up to you and your father, I said. She committed multiple crimes, but even if you don't report her, the bank is already reviewing everything. The consequences are coming with or without your permission. He nodded again quietly. Mom? His voice was small. Do you hate me? I sighed. Deeply. No, I said, but I'm disappointed. He looked down. And I'm proud, I added. He blinked. Proud? Yes, I said, because you finally saw the truth. It took too long, and it cost too much, but you saw it. He stepped forward, arms open hesitantly. Can I hug you? I waited. Then I nodded. He hugged me and cried into my shoulder like he hadn't done since childhood. I held him, not forgiving the past, but acknowledging the possibility of a future. The aftermath unfolded over weeks. Emily was investigated by the bank. The jewelry store flagged her name. Her former employer blacklisted her. Rental companies turned her away. Her reputation crumbled. And Jeremy? He moved back in with David, started therapy, got a job, an actual one, and slowly, painfully, became the man I always hoped he'd grow into. As for me, I didn't return to the old house. Not then, not right away. I stayed with Maggie until David and I rebuilt something that resembled equality, not the old married silence we'd fallen into, but partnership. I continued working at the community center, joined the gardening club, started a weekly storytelling group for women, over 50 women who needed to hear that betrayal wasn't the end of their story. We laughed, we cried, we drank too much tea and sometimes too much wine, and I rediscovered something Emily had nearly stolen from me: my purpose, my voice, my fire. Months later, David and I sat on the porch of our house, my house, watching the sunset. The bank had reversed the fraudulent transfers. The financial attorney had restored our account protections. The police case was ongoing. Emily was gone. Jeremy was healing. And I was thriving. David reached over, took my hand. You saved us, he said. I shook my head. No, I saved myself. You both caught up. He smiled ruefully. Fair enough. I leaned back, breathing in the warm summer air. David, I said, I want to say something clearly. Go on. You didn't protect me when you should have, I said. And that hurt deeply. He nodded. I know, but you chose truth in the end, I said. And that matters. He squeezed my hand. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you. I considered that, and decided it was enough for now. People sometimes ask me, Lorraine, aren't you angry? Don't you regret what happened? And I laugh. Oh, honey, I don't regret anything. Emily thought she broke me, but what she really did was force me to rebuild smarter, stronger, sharper. I rose, not in spite of what she did, but because of it. And the final triumphant truth I carry now is simple. No one, not a daughter-in-law, not a son, not even a husband, gets to define my worth. I define it. At 63, I started over. At 63, I reclaimed my dignity. At 63, I discovered a version of myself even I didn't know I had. So here's my message for any woman who has been lied to, stolen from, manipulated, dismissed, or pushed aside. You are not done. You are not defeated. And you are never, ever too old to rise from the ashes and set the world on fire.